very excited. We've got another great day of content for you. I think we're ready to introduce both Lily Varon, principal analyst at Forrester, and Zara Azawi, who is a consultant at Forrester, and we're going to talk about the ROI of software monetization. So, Lily, let me hand things off to you.
Yay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Don't worry too much about what a total economic impact means. It is an ROI study, but it is a very specific methodology for calculating that you'll learn all about in a few moments. It's really, really lovely to be here with you. I study billing and subscription management and payments and sort of software selling strategies and kind of that quote to cash, what we like to call the messy middle tech stack. So what I wanted to do today is to spend a few moments talking about the software industry and what we see and some unique, fun little data points about it. And then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Zara, who will explain what we mean by TEI, which is and sounds more exciting, or is more exciting than it sounds, because it is the nuts and bolts of proving the impact of a software solution to a business, both quantitatively and unquantitatively or qualitatively. So it's a really, really fun study. And Zara will go through that from the summary of it, the journeys and the results of the study. And we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Before we get to that, though, I'm going to steal the microphone for a few moments to walk through what I think is some kind of juicy data tidbits about the software industry. And I'll encourage Michael to join in and chime in with some insights, because Revenera has boots on the ground here, right? And so it's really interesting to see and compare customer examples to the data that we have. What we may know intuitively is that software companies are more likely to seek growth for their companies from launching new products, exploring new channels, selling through new means, right? There's the highlighted data here you can see compares the high-tech and software industry companies to the global total in our data. And this data is fresh. This data is from 2025, right? And so you see nearly half of our high-tech or service or software industry respondents say that they're seeking growth through launching new products or services. And more than a third, close to 40%, say that they're doing so, that they're going to seek growth by developing new distribution channels, right? This is exciting. This is newness. This is change, right? But at the same time, we can see that software companies are also more likely than the global average to prioritize stability of the current state, right? Stability of current operations, to prioritize stability over rapid changes to products and services. That to me is really profound, that we have these competing interests, these theoretically competing interests of prioritizing stability over and above any other, over the global average, but also more likely to seek change through making change or to seek growth through making change.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Lily. Obviously, time to market is critical, and it's not always with a new product, but it might be with a new way of delivering things or a new way of offering to pay for things. We had a great conversation yesterday about AI monetization and customer demand for that. And at the same time, software monetization is just one of those things that should just work, right? So talking about the stability element of things with a counterbalance of, accelerating time to market. So that's really interesting stats.
And the software industry, I think, is almost the kind of perfect case study of the times we're in, because we have this post-pandemic and sort of global macroeconomic volatility or tensions, where we have, instead of innovation at all costs and growth at all costs that we saw during the pandemic of digitization, now we've got this pendulum swing in the other direction a little bit for the seeking of stability and efficient growth, profitability. But in sneaks AI, right? And this kind of truly hype bubble that we're in now. It's not to say that AI isn't profoundly disruptive and there's a lot of opportunity, but I think we also are probably all pretty saturated with the hype of the market. And so I think that how do we figure out, and that AI monetization question is such a valuable one at this moment, because how do we seek efficient growth and profitability while also keeping on top of market opportunities and product evolution with AI and all the different manifestations of it. But it's also the software industry is growing. Our data, Forrester's data is, we're seeing double-digit growth in the software industry over the next 5 years, globally. The U.S. and Europe are sort of in lockstep. The U.S. is growing a little bit, or North America is growing a little bit faster than Europe, but and software makes up like 2/3 of global tech spend, right? So this is an industry that is important to the economy. It's important to making our society tick, but it's also full of kind of contradictions. One that we just saw, right, with the software industry saying, okay, well, we're more likely to grow by new products and new distribution channels. We're also prioritizing stability above rapid change. We see cybersecurity and the emphasis of security software and the influence of security software growth driving a lot of that software growth. Companies, so a famous company who shall not be named that had a very big deal, big outage last year, is still growing 30% year over year, right? And so we're full of contradictions here, which is really fascinating. And I think we could often see, when you look at this data, that the software industry, those first two columns there are what we saw about, we're prioritizing stability over rapid change, and that middle two bars are about developing and launching new products. But there's other interesting places where the software industry kind of over-indexes on their prioritizations, compliance and risk, right? Prioritizing compliance and risk and managing that risk when they're thinking about new opportunities, but also expanding and scaling AI and analytics and data at the same time. And to a little hat tip to the monetization piece, software industries are much more likely, or significantly, statistically significantly more likely than the global average to be transforming their business models as a result of changes to the market. And so we have this, I think, really compelling moment in history for the software industry, because of these competing pressures and it's representative, as I said, of everyone else. It's just under a microscope. I think the software industry is a really good example of what everyone else is feeling, right? These dual competing kind of priorities of innovation, AI adoption, data and analytics, and modifying our products to incorporate them, to modify our products or our business models, right? Our monetization strategies in lockstep with our product changes, and yet we need to be compliant. We need to be mitigating risk. We need to be maintaining as much stability as possible. Yeah. And so we would think, and I think that we think these things are competing, and yet what is brilliant to me, or what is really interesting to me about what we're about to hear, is that from this study, is that those things are not at odds. You can pursue these two things at the same time, and sort of software monetization and usage management and entitlements management is one way in which these two things come together really beautifully.
Yeah, and not to steal Zara's thunder, but obviously you want your engineers focused on those new features that you want to bring to market, whether it's AI monetization or something else, and make sure that you're able to monetize it and be profitable while you're doing it. So
right.
Can't wait to hear from Zara.
Exactly. Perfect segue. to the meat of the conversation today, which is, you say, fine, Lily, thanks for this, but prove it. Show me the money, literally. And so this is what this study will do. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Zara, who will walk through this really fabulous study that Revenera commissioned Forrester to do on its behalf.
Thanks so much, Lily. It's great to be here with everyone today. My name is Zara Azawi. I'm a consultant with Forrester's Total Economic Impact practice. And so what I do is I help organizations quantify the business value of technology investments so that you can make smarter, data-driven decisions. I'm really excited here to dive into the findings of the Total Economic Impact study we conducted with Revenera. So before I dive into the findings, I want to talk a little bit about what a TI is and how it can help, inform your technology purchases. So I want to be clear first on what a TI is not. So it is not a prediction of what you're going to get in terms of ROI. It's not a detailed comparison guide for scoping and pricing. It's a framework. And so we strongly advise you to apply it to your situation. But again, it's not a prediction of results. The total economic impact is a methodology that Forrester has been using to help our clients for nearly 25 years. And we happen to deliver a lot of TIs because our research and experience tells us that decision makers need that next level business case that makes an economic justification for an investment. So the objective of the TI framework is to identify all the factors that affect an investment decision. So in addition to that standard ROI calculation, which looks at the quantified value of the benefits against the full range of costs, we also look at flexibility factors, or ways that an organization might reap additional value or use cases without having to spend any additional money. So basically, now that you have that technology in place, what are you able to unlock 6 months down the line? What impact will that bring to your business in the future? We also factor in risks that could potentially affect results across different organizations, things like industry differences or operational complexity. And these are addressed both qualitatively in the narrative and quantitatively through the risk-adjusted benefits and costs in the financial model. Most importantly, we speak with several customers who have experienced a real measurable impact out in the wild as a result of the investment and use that as the basis of our findings. So here's a high-level visualization of the process steps we took to get there. So we started with due diligence, where we spoke with subject matter experts. Then we conducted interviews with 4 Revenera customers discussing their experience and benefits and costs associated with their investment. Based on that customer data, we then created a composite organization, which is essentially a representative and hypothetical organization upon which we apply our financial analysis. This then all gets rolled into a written case study that goes through a rigorous review cycle. And before I get into the meat of the findings, I just want to quickly highlight a few disclosures. So it's important to know that this webinar covers an abridged version of the full case study. And while the study was commissioned by Revenera and they did provide customer introductions, Revenera was not involved in the interview process, and Forrester maintains editorial control over the study. So let's dive into what we found here. So at a high level, our study found that an investment in Revenera, the composite saw an ROI of 426%, total benefits of $35.6 million over 3 years, and if you factor costs back in, a net present value of $28.8 million. So I love letting customers speak for themselves, and you will be seeing their words throughout this presentation. One customer here summarized the impact of Revenera nicely, highlighting its ability to support complex, high-volume operations through a flexible API-driven platform. They also identified that a few other competitors could match Revenera's ability to handle that level of sophistication in terms of product and SKU structures at scale, and that those results speak for themselves. So let's look at the financial analysis in a little bit more detail. To give you an understanding of the organizations that participated in the study, Forrester interviewed 4 representatives from 4 organizations across different industries, including engineering technology, energy, manufacturing, and cybersecurity, with annual revenue ranging anywhere from $1 billion to $25 billion. So the diversity in industry here is great because it means that our findings reflect a broad set of use cases and operational complexities, which make the results more relevant across a wider range of organizations. So an important aspect of our analysis is understanding the before states of customers and identifying the commonalities in those experiences to build our analysis against. So across all the interviewees, a few key themes emerged, including revenue leakage and compliance risks, which were largely due to a lack of visibility into entitlement usage. Secondly, legacy systems could not keep up as business needs evolved. Some organizations were also relying on custom-built solutions that were very resource-intensive and that accumulated technical debt. And then, of course, there were manual workflows that were creating inefficiencies and slowing things down across the board. One interviewee shared that their decision to move to Revenera was driven by a need to improve their financials for core offerings because they realized that they were underselling its value. And with a major revenue shift ahead, they needed that full visibility into their customer base to understand who their customers were, what they had, and how they were using it. So the interviewed customers were looking for a solution that could satisfy the following requirements: reduce revenue leakage and ensure compliance through better license tracking, gain deeper visibility into customer usage for improved revenue opportunities and forecasting, manage growing licensing complexity with a unified and scalable system, accelerate time to market by streamlining workflows, automate entitlement and licensing processes to cut down on manual effort, and finally, eliminate technical debt by modernizing those legacy systems. So based on the interviews, we took the experiences and the stories of these customers and we threw them into a blender, and out came a composite institution to convey the aggregate financial analysis. The composite, again, is a representative of all the interviewees and their common experiences while remaining completely anonymous. So this is where you'll want to pay attention to your own metrics and stats in order to start modeling your own organization's potential benefits. So for the purposes of this study, our composite organization is a global organization in software and technology solutions with $2 billion in annual revenue. 75% of its total revenue comes from software, and 85% of its software is SaaS, while the other 15% is on-prem. The software is primarily monetized through subscriptions, with 90% sold via term and usage-based models, and the other 10% through perpetual licenses. So it's important to note that the composite is a representative of the customers that we interview. It's meant to be generalized. Therefore, you might not exactly see yourself in these characteristics. However, if you understand the assumptions, you can apply our findings to your own organization. So again, the following benefits are applied to our composite. However, they are represented widely across the interviewed customers per our analysis. So there were 4 total benefits of Revenera that we were able to quantify, including increased revenue from software monetization, model modernization, increased revenue from improved compliance and streamlined operations, accelerated time to market, and end user efficiencies. So we just want to encourage you to download the full study. You can take more time to review the tables and formulas in detail to see exactly how we arrived at these numbers. But we'll take a closer look at each of these benefits. First benefit we'll dive into here is increased revenue from software monetization, model modernization. So interviewees shared that Revenera was key to helping their organizations modernize software monetization. So moving from perpetual to recurring models like subscription and usage-based prices. So this change brought, of course, more predictable revenue more frequently, and also better aligned pricing to real-world customer usage. So in the financial model, the composite organization transitions 30% of its perpetual licensing software revenue to subscription-based models in year 1, 50% in year 2, and 70% by year 3. And over 3 years, the composite sees a $38 million increase in revenue from transitioning from perpetual to subscription-based licensing. After applying a 15% operating margin and a 15% risk adjustment, this benefit amounts to $3.9 million over 3 years. The next benefit is increased revenue from improved compliance and streamlined operations. So before, Revenera interviews described challenges with revenue leakage due to piracy, underreported usage, and entitlement misuse, all of which were driven by limited visibility into software compliance. And Revenera addressed this with real-time insights that helped organizations enforce compliance, detect non-compliance early, and confidently track license usage. So this allowed them to recover lost revenue and also reduce future leakage. In the financial model, the composite loses 4% of its revenue each year due to non-compliance and ineffective license tracking before Revenera, and they're able to recapture that after the investment. Over the 3 years, the composite sees a $179 billion increase in revenue based on that improvement. And after we apply a 15% operating margin and risk adjustment, this benefit amounts to $18.8 million over 3 years. The third benefit we had quantified here was around accelerated time to market for new product releases. So before Revenera, organizations faced costly delays in licensing and entitlement setup, which left ready-to-sell products stuck in limbo. Manual process created bottlenecks and forced companies to postpone or sometimes even abandon launches while spending months on those tedious integrations. And Revenera eliminated these roadblocks so businesses were able to generate revenue sooner, respond to customer demands faster, and just generally stay ahead of the competition. In the financial model, the composite experiences a 90% reduction in time to enable licensing and entitlement for new software products by year 3. And over 3 years, the composite experiences incremental revenue gains of $106 million. After applying that 15% operating margin and 20% risk adjustment, the final benefit amounts to $10.4 million over 3 years. And the final quantified benefit is the end user efficiencies that interviewees spoke to. So in addition to unlocking revenue, implementing Revenera rather than building and maintaining an in-house solution drove significant efficiency gains across the board. So that build to buy story really came through in customer interviews. Talking about those end user efficiencies again, in addition to unlocking revenue, implementing Revenera, rather than building and maintaining that in-house solution drove significant efficiency gains across IT support, customer support, and developer teams. So that build versus buy story really came through clearly in customer interviews. So firstly, in terms of IT support savings, before Revenera, IT teams spent considerable time responding to manual requests for entitlement data. But with Revenera's self-service capabilities, sales and support teams were able to access data independently and free up IT time to focus more on strategic tasks. So the composite is able to reassign 75% of those IT resources. In terms of customer support savings, support teams previously spent hours searching multiple systems for licensing information. And with Revenera's centralized entitlement view, agents were able to respond more quickly and accurately to customer requests. In the model, the composite's customer support team experiences a 95% reduction in time spent gathering entitlement and license data. Finally, in terms of developer savings, Revenera eliminated the need for custom entitlement development and manual updates. So as a result, the composite reassigns 90% of developers who were previously dedicated to maintaining a complex in-house system. Altogether, these operational efficiencies streamlined processes, reduced overhead, and freed up resources to focus on those higher value tasks, ultimately delivering $2.5 million in productivity gains over 3 years. So in addition to those quantified benefits, Revenera customers also identified benefits that were not quantified as part of the financial model. Many highlighted how Revenera made it easier to manage global compliance by offering flexible software distribution and centralized tracking that helped meet regional regulations without disrupting operations. Customers also saw improvements to customer experience. So with entitlement data consolidated into one view, support teams could respond faster and more accurately, which led to more fruitful customer interactions. They also reported increased sales opportunities. So having that real-time usage insights, account managers were able to better have targeted sales conversations and potentially uncover upsell opportunities, and then also engage customers at the right time for renewal. Interviewees consistently also called out the strength of Revenera's support team, describing them as very responsive and collaborative, and also spoke to that direct access to engineers when needed. The last piece here is the flexibility that Revenera enabled in terms of providing organizations with that agility to adapt to evolving market demands. So in terms of pricing, offerings, and go-to-market strategies, really being able to adapt that based on the current macroeconomic environment and, again, market demands. So, of course, covered all the benefits of Revenera, but to calculate the ROI, you need that other half of the equation, which are the costs. There are more details in the case study surrounding these cost categories, and Revenera's pricing will vary across organizations. So please reach out to Revenera directly for more details on that. But at a high level in the study, we grouped costs into 3 categories: fees for Revenera, implementation costs, and ongoing management effort and training costs. So in conclusion, our study found that with the investment in Revenera, the composite organization experiences an ROI of 426%. and an MPV of $28.8 million. And just to wrap up, a reminder again for everyone to check out the full study, which shows in more detail how our composite achieves these results. Thank you.
That was amazing. Again, I always, the worst marketer ever, hate talking about ourselves, but I really look at the TEI study as a really good deep dive into a scenario that we come up with a lot, or up against a lot, is build versus buy. So, we sell to software producers, they have software engineers, they think, well, we'll just build it ourselves. And I think, the one thing that I really appreciate about the total economic impact study is that it does lay that out pretty clearly, that there are a lot of benefits for buying this. And again, as you were just saying, letting your engineers focus on roadmap type items that really deliver the features and the value that their end customers are looking for. So thank you for that. One quick question for you while we're waiting to see if anybody in the audience has questions. Again, folks, now's the time. You've got Lily, you've got Zara right here. Ask away. But one of the things I valued in this process, in the project, Zara, was you getting to speak directly to our customers without us in the room. Any sort of surprising or interesting things come up during those conversations that you weren't necessarily expecting, or that sort of made a light bulb go off for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, the customer interview phase is really the bread and butter of the TI process, right? We're getting those one-on-one customer conversations where Revenera is not in the room, and so they feel like they can really speak candidly to the benefits that they've seen from the solution. I would say really the sheer scale of recaptured revenue from improved compliance and entitlement tracking was a lot much higher than maybe I expected. I think, organizations that we spoke with knew that there was some revenue leakage, but they often underestimated how much was slipping through the cracks, and maybe sometimes didn't even want to admit that that was the case. And so, Revenera gave them that visibility into or provisioning, piracy, and expired entitlements, like I had mentioned previously. And the numbers that they were seeing were in the tens of millions. In fact, improved compliance, I think, drove the single largest quantified benefit in the study over that 3-year period. So I think that was probably the most, interesting finding of the case study.
Interesting. And you touched upon this a little bit earlier, but for folks in the audience who are looking at your composite organization and saying that doesn't look anything like me, you talked about how they can use it to sort of model their own, estimates of what their returns would be. Any advice on how they might approach that, or how to take that composite organization with a grain of salt if it doesn't look exactly like them?
Yep, absolutely. So the financial frameworks are going to be your friend, right? If you belong to another industry or size than the composite, remember, we interviewed customers of different sizes, industries, and so the benefits quantified here span those characteristics. But what will change is that dollar figure associated with each benefit. So if you look at the financial framework, there are lines that are labeled composite and interviews. And so what I recommend doing is taking your company's characteristics and replacing any line that says composite with your own numbers. And then by doing that, you're taking advantage of the impact, and then you're able to fine tune it to your organization for a more accurate representation of what those benefits might look like.
Great. That's super helpful. And one of the other numbers that really impressed me was the payback period. A lot of folks will ask that question of us, and coming out of our mouths, it's harder to believe than when you've done the work to sort of calculate what that looks like. Any comments on payback period?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up. There were so many numbers to talk about here, so I'm glad you gave me the chance to talk about that a little bit. So payback period is basically how long it takes for the investment to pay for itself. In other words, it's the point where the total benefits that you've gained equal the initial costs that you put in. So for this study, that happens to be in less than 6 months, which means that you'll get the value back pretty quickly in terms of what you spent upfront.
Yeah, and just to clarify there, that means all of the pre-work that you need to do before, and Lily, this too from the other areas that you focus on, the actual technical implementation isn't always the hard part, right? It's making those business decisions around what do we want to achieve, how are we going to do it, what are the processes that we need to put in place to support that, if it's a business model transition or digital transformation project in the case of hardware vendors, to know that once you're ready to go, it's just 6 months to the payback period, I thought was an impressive number. But any closing thoughts that either one of you want to share?
I wanted to say something jumping off of that. I think the other thing, there's that clamping down on the revenue leakage is so impressive. But I think that the sort of the other side of that coin, or the companion benefit that goes along with that, is how you utilize that usage data. Because there's, once you can more firmly understand how your customers are using and engaging with your product, for better or for worse, it's how you intended them to, or is it not? Where are they spending their time? What what are they consuming? How is that close to and compared to the contract or the term that you've set out to, and how you build, then you can build communication strategies around that, engagement strategies around that, product roadmaps, and inform monetization and pricing questions with your own data, with your own product usage data at a much more crystallized way. And so I think that there's even, you can think about your customer experience peers might go, oh God, right, we're clamping down on customers who are happily using our product. How is that going to impact our brand? Well, if you can actually use that usage data, not only to just cut down on piracy and maintain compliance and for like fair use, but you can say, hey, now I can help this customer maybe understand more about themselves, or how can I make this product better for this segment? And so that I think is a really important. And some of it is a little bit unquantified in this study, but some of it is truly quantified, right? And so it's really interesting, and I want to make sure everyone walks away with this. Yes, you can clamp down on the unwanted stuff, and at the same time, improve customer experiences and improve the product development with that usage data.
100%. But Lily, thank you so much. Zara, thank you so much for all your hard work on the study, but also for getting ready for today's session.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.